Mr. Spock. Yes, Captain? Mr. Spock, are you feeling well? Your color seems to be a bit off. My color seems to be a bit off. What, Captain?
Landing party to Enterprise. Landing party to Enterprise. Send help. We're in dire straits. When our shuttlecraft entered the atmosphere, we experienced a malfunction and the shuttle landed hard. Everyone survived the crash. But the weird thing is, as soon as we stepped out onto the planet's surface, everyone in a red shirt fell down dead. Send help. But whatever you do, don't wear a red shirt. Landing party out. Welcome to another episode of Bizarre Brain Comics. And as if you couldn't tell from all this stuff, we're going to be talking about Star Trek. In particular, this Star Trek right here. This is Star Trek number 12 from 1971 from Gold Key Comics. Written by Len Wein and drawn by, see if I can pronounce his name, Alberto Giollitti. I want to tell you a little bit, okay, because you may not be familiar with Gold Key Comics. See, Gold Key Comics was an imprint of Western Publishing, which started publishing comics in 1962. Later, in the late 70s, it changed its name to Whitman Comics and continued publishing until 1984. Now, under the Whitman name, it was primarily reprint material because they had many years of stuff out there. The target audience may well have grown up, and so they didn't, with a few exceptions, didn't need to produce new material. And prior to 62, Western Publishing, they packaged content for business partner Dell Comics. And that's why when it sprung up as Gold Key, they just kept producing the same material with the same numbering system and such. And you may notice, a little bit later when we get a better picture of it, that this comic book does not have the Comics Code Authority seal on it. And the Comics Code Authority started in the early 50s as a way to self-censor the comics. Anyway, Dell, at that time, Dell refused to submit to the Comics Code because they said their standards were already exceeded those of the Comics Code, so they didn't need to put it on there. And very, very few exceptions. The Dell Comics and later Gold Key were the only comics that could get distributed and sold on the stands without a Comics Code Authority seal. Now, the artist is Alberto Giollitti. The cover painting because most of the covers for most of their titles at that time, or the non-humor titles anyway, were had cover paintings, and this was painted by an artist named George Wilson, who did work for them for decades, and he I guess he passed away in the 1990s, I think. Now Giollitti was not the first Star Trek artist. That was Nevio Zakara, these names, and he only did the first 2 issues. And Giollitti was born in Rome in 1923, and he died in Rome in 1993. After World War II, he went on what was described as an artist's odyssey for several years. And he settled in several various cities, Buenos Aires, New York, and Lake George, Florida, for example. And when he first got to New York, he spoke very little English, and he stayed mostly in his apartment, working. And as he worked, he would keep the radio on all the time, so that he could hear English, American English. And he's a wonderful draftsman. He was a wonderful draftsman. And his page and panel compositions were well planned out. And he used vast photo reference and other reference materials, including a wide variety of props. He supposedly had a whole room in his apartment just for props. Had for guns, shields, other weapons, hats, saddles, all kinds of material. And while planning out what he needed to draw to tell the story, he would often take his own photographs of friends, acquaintances, and himself. Took a lot of pictures of himself. So he knew for the figures he would need to draw. He worked on several gold key titles besides Star Trek, such as Turok, Son of Stone. Now you might know him as Turok, Dinosaur Hunter. Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, Gunsmoke, and various other titles, and even a few issues of Tarzan. So, beam us up, Scotty, so we can dig into the Star Trek.
Bizarre Brain Comics. Okay, Star Trek, issue 11, issue 12, 1971. Now you can see this copy is pretty rough, but there's a reason why. It's amazing it's in this good a condition. This book here is the very first Star Trek comic that I bought. I bought this in 1971, so at this time it's 49 years old. And I was 11. And if you look closely here, I was an 11-year-old kid. You can see I took a marker and I did a little bit of marking up here with a pen. And these pictures here, Kirk and Spock. My dad did that. The scribble on Spock's face, my dad did that. These pictures were printed in black and white. So I took markers and I colored their shirts. I was a kid, who knew? Notice it's a nice cover painting. George Wilson. He did a great job. He did paintings for westerns, Tarzan, Star Trek, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, all kinds. Look at this pirate's face. It looks like, don't he look like Blackbeard? Yeah. And here I got the splash page, and what the heck? This is it's supposed to be in the 23rd century, and they looked like pirates from 300 years ago. Well, that's part of the charm, I guess. Because I loved Star Trek, and where I grew up, a small farming community, had a drugstore with one spinner rack of comics, and that's all I had for my selection was whatever they had there. And they couldn't order specific comics; he just got whatever he got, and so they weren't too consistent on getting the Gold Key titles. So I only saw Star Trek once in a while, and this was the first one that I ever bought. And here you can see a good example of Giollitti's great artwork. He's magnificent. His nice placement of blacks, composition, nice circular composition, of course highlighting. Something's going on here, but we don't know yet. Great figures. Captain, you cannot let them do this. Do not be absurd, Mr. Scott. Of course he can. After all, he's the one who betrayed us. And so die all traitors. Prepare to walk the plank. Okay, and it's kind of goofy insofar as they just modeled the pirates right after the pirates from the 1700s, 1700s. Even the ship. Here's the pirate ship coming in, and it looks like, you can see it better here. It looks like an old ship, old sailing ship, just with engine nacelles. And they got lines, and they cross over to the ship that they're attacking. Oh, anyway, the Captain's Log Supplemental. In this, the 23rd century, where man has learned to sail the sea of deep space, the almost lost art of piracy has risen from the ashes. Well, of course, we know, those of us who have followed Star Trek all these years, we know that there were Orion pirates. And they were nothing like this. But this is sheer fun. And one of the reasons I've read this book so many times. And of course, it was Star Trek. I loved Star Trek. And I liked the pirates. And of course, I just loved this guy's artwork. Okay, so here we see pirates attacking shipping, and said, swiftly, violently, the fierce try that again. The fierce freebooters strip their victims of any and all valuables. Then they destroy the ship. Okay, now this is where we come. Captain's log. Stardate 3246.3, Lieutenant Sulu reporting. As per the captain's orders, we are pursuing a small space cruiser in the direction of the planet Tortuga 6. Interception imminent. Tortuga. Tortuga was a pirate port in the Caribbean. But notice, got the Enterprise, but it looks like there's rocket exhaust coming out of the back, and that's where you see it all the time. It looks more dynamic, but I suspect that Giollitti did not know a whole lot about Star Trek. And initially, the writers didn't either. But of course, to be fair to them, they didn't have a whole lot of, when they first started, they didn't have a whole lot of lore and continuity to draw from. And they had things wrong, like it gave the order, said rockets on full for going to warp, and instead little things like in the transporter room, they'd beam down and beam back up, and they would appear in what they called the materialization chamber. So, but eventually, as the writers gained more knowledge of Star Trek, it conformed more to what we know as Star Trek. Although the plots were often very different, some standard science fiction fare. Still a lot of fun reading. So they increased to warp 5. If we don't catch up to that space rover, it'll be too late. Yeah. So the ship the ship they're chasing lands, and here we see this pirates right out of the 1700s with a spaceship landing. Then who gets out but Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and Scotty, dressed up as pirates. Notice the old-fashioned sailor togs that they're wearing. Even as wearing a cutlass and the weapon he's carrying here, while, as we find out later, still a phaser, as modeled after an old flintlock pistol. Then they're challenged, and he said, "Yeah, we're pirates." And look at this. Look at this picture here. It's beautiful. Here's some damage to that page. Beautiful image here. You can see all the characters. Really gives the atmosphere. The old buildings in the background. Beautiful figures. He's like I said, he's the master draftsman. And even here, when you see McCoy, looks just like him. Even if you didn't know it was supposed to be McCoy, when you saw that, you'd know that's McCoy. And he has a flashback to when they get orders that they're being told that a few months before, a big shipment of dilithium crystals had been snatched by some pirates, and because a map, they'd gotten possession of a map, that part of a map that showed where these dilithium crystals are being stored. And the Starfleet, the whole Federation is in danger because there's a shortage of dilithium. So they're given orders. They have to infiltrate. They're told about the captain. Let's see, where's his name? I have the location. Blackjack Nova is the captain name. He's a pirate captain hiding on Tortuga 6. But Tortuga is outside the Federation's jurisdiction. We have no power to pursue anyone there. Yeah, that's Spock. Looks just like him. He kind of goes overboard on the ears there a little bit. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah. So this is their plan. They go undercover, pretending to be pirates. He's got the map. Here's another. Look at this one. Another great one. You don't even see any of their faces, but they're recognizable. The great figures. Look at that. I don't know if you can see that background. It's a little fuzzy there. Great detail in that background. He would just fill his panels full of another one. Every panel is a masterpiece. Get back. All the detail. All that detail. The coins, the cups, the mugs, the attire. Just like right out of an old pirate movie. And here's this guy here. He's bragging on his captain. And says, "Step up, who'll be the first to step up and shake the hand of a real man. Blackjack Nova, the scourge of the stars." Look at there. There are no real female characters in here, but in this particular issue. But there are a few female figures, at least in the background and stuff. And here's one. Real nice drawing of this lady. And she looks like she stepped right out of the 1700s. So Captain Blackjack Nova. And we get a better look at him. Well, you can see him. I'll get a better look at him in a little bit. So it says, so that's Nova, huh? So they need to get an introduction there. He is drinking his rum. Scotty has an idea. "Ah, quit your yammering, you drunken fool. Blackjack Nova couldn't hold a candle to my captain in the middle of a Altarian fog." "What's that you say?" "I said that if your captain was twice the man he is now, he still wouldn't be half the man my captain is." Oh, and then there comes the obligatory barroom brawl. Here they go. Look at that. Nice figure. Nice pivot in his in that figure. Twist of the figure, making it dynamic as he's pulling that sword. Scotty pulling back for a punch.
Kirk and company joining in. And here they are, full all-out barroom brawl. And they clean these pirates' clocks. And soon after, your crew has a lot to learn about staying on its feet, Nova. Well, you did a fine job with lesson 1, bucko. Who be ye? And brings ye to a black hole like Tortuga. That pirate voice is a little hard on my throat. But this is a great picture here. Great picture. And remarkably dynamic, because a lot of the Gold Key stuff wasn't known for being as dynamic. The page layout, standard 6-panel layout. There would be 2 combined into 1. And here it takes the space of 4 panels and tells as much story as any 4 panels would. And again, all this detail. See, all this detail. There's another good view of Kirk. He tells him about the map that he's got, and says he knows that Blackjack Nova has the other half. Now here you go. If that ain't Blackbeard, I don't know who is. That's a great shot right there. So they make a deal. They're going to work together. Takes him into they take to his shuttlecraft to go to his own ship, the Windjammer, which is that pirate ship we saw earlier. This is a nice view of it. It looks like, again, it looks just like it came right out of the 1700s Caribbean. A nice little shuttlecraft here. Even got the skull and crossbones on it. We'll get another shot of that shuttlecraft later. Here they are on board ship. They give them a crappy little berths. And then Spock and Scotty are talking. Well, the Creel, that one right there, is Creel. I guess he's the first mate. And he overhears Spock and Scotty talking about agents of the Federation. While Kirk spots Creel spying on Spock and Scotty. So there's only one thing he can do. Well, when Creel goes to report to his captain, Kirk comes in and interrupts. Later, Creel, I have more important business. And then he says, I've discovered that two of my men are Federation spies. Oh my gosh. There's another great, look at that hand, that figure, the clothing, everything great. There's Spock's little 2 big ears. But you got to make sure you can tell he's got pointy ears. So they're condemned. They're going to walk the plank. But first they're going to put on spacesuits so that they can suffer longer. Here at the end of part 1, they're ejected out the airlock into space. And he says, Captain, you cannot let them do this. You should have thought of the consequences when you started. Get rid of them. And there they go, out into space. End of part 1. But they don't hang around. You see them floating around in space. But they don't hang around to watch them die. They take off. Leave them floating there, and bam! Zzz, they're beamed up to the Enterprise. Now this is a neat little thing here. See, it doesn't even look like the transporter pad on the show. But they do call it transporter deck here instead of a materialization chamber. Welcome back, Mr. Spock. For a while there, we were afraid we wouldn't find you. I was confident you would not fail, Mr. Sulu. That is precisely why the captain had the Enterprise follow Nova's ship, using the Romulan cloaking device on board to avoid detection, making reference back to one of the TV episodes. And that's surprising.
that showed that the writers were learning more about Star Trek. Here they are back in uniform, and trying to track Blackjack Nova. Here they go. Here's another shot of the Enterprise with a rocket blast coming out of the engine nacelles. Even mentions the impulse engines. That gentleman is Taos 4, an influential drop in a universal bucket. Somewhere in that jungle, the hope of the Federation lies buried. We must find it before... No need to finish, Mr. Spock. We all know exactly what you mean. Now this looks more like... Here, looks more like the transporter pad. They're beaming down. Here they are beaming down on the planet. And they're met right off the bat. If there's any force going to be used around here, I'll do the using. There's another real nice Spock figure. Or headshot. Here we got, see, this an old man. Ain't nothing fascinating about it, fella. This planet ain't inhabited, less'n you countin' me, and I don't want to be here. So this is a guy named Ben Gunn. And pulling a little bit from Treasure Island. He's just like Captain Flint. He was marooned on the island, on Treasure Island. And like in Treasure Island, well, we'll get to that. It says, now, how long, how did you happen to be shipwrecked here? Mr. Spock, look, the vapor trail's coming in clean and clear. So the ship's coming down, the shuttlecraft is coming down, though they got a skedaddle. Here they are, Kirk and Blackjack Nova, putting the two parts of their map together to find where there it goes, to find where the treasure is hidden. They find the spot and dig it up. There's nothing there. It says, it's your fault. You did this to me. Somehow you got to the treasure first. I don't know how you did it, and I don't care. The map is useless to me now, and so are you. It's time for you to die. Oh, that pirate voice is hard on my throat. And Spock zaps it out of his hand. See here, you can see it again. It looks like a flintlock pistol, but it's little doodads here on the end indicate it's actually a sophisticated phaser. And there's Spock popping up. Blackjack tries to get away, knocks Kirk out of the way, everybody else. Kirk stops Spock, and he takes after him, pulling his own gun. Blackjack attacks him. Here's another real nice figure. Real nice figure here, too. These are all, beautiful, beautiful figures. Look at those. Look at those. Beautiful figures. Nice detail. Even here, there's not much detail to show. Here, in this panel, you can see more. You get the jungle. And you can even see something I've been wanting to, but I haven't done much of, is not just the page layout, but page composition. Here, you got Kirk here, and he's framed by jungle. You can see him looking over here, which leads your eyes right, of course, to this panel, to this balloon, and then over to this balloon, and you got the background tree there in the background, which brings your eye right down here to the captain jumping on Kirk. Kirk's figure draws your eye right down here to this long panel here. And they're drawing swords. They're gonna have a obligatory pirate sword fight. Nice figures there. Right? Brings your eye down here. His knee brings your eye up here, which brings you right back up into the Kirk figure here, where he's knocking the sword out of his hand. There his figure is. And it brings you right down into this panel, the dialogue balloons. You hear Kirk being hit by Blackjack, which brings your eye right down to the corner here. The All that is planned composition to lead your eye. Sometimes it's just instinctive, but I suspect he planned it that way. And it just leads your eye right around the page to tell the story. Here he's getting away, getting into the shuttlecraft. Kirk knocks Kirk down. Kirk throws, in desperation, throws his sword, misses him, but apparently does some damage inside the ship because it gets airborne again, but then crashes. Now here's something I wanted to show you. I don't know if you don't notice much, if you know this much about it, but this shuttlecraft here looks like this compartment here, part here with the skids, looks like it's based on a helicopter. But this part here, and you can see it here, really looks like it comes from the V-1 rocket from World War II. So he drew on things. Here we go, he crashed. They find out that Ben Gunn had the treasure stored in a cave the whole time. That's why it was empty. Just like in Treasure Island. Then there they are. They recover the dilithium crystals. Ben Gunn goes wherever the hell he's going to go. Probably to jail. And then the Enterprise takes off. It says, imagine pirates in the 23rd century. Who ever would have believed it? Any student of your Earth history, Doctor, your race is famous for its violent tendencies. Yeah. Now, yeah. And that's it for that issue. Now, I wanted to say something. I listened to a podcast called Geek History Lesson. I love the podcast, and it's primarily about comics. Even the hosts write and publish their own comics, but they do other geeky things, and they've had programs about Star Trek. But I have yet to hear them do one about Star Trek comics. And I wish they would. There's a lot to draw on from Star Trek comics because, well, it's comics. But Gold Key did it for many years, then Marvel had it for a little while, then DC had it for several years, and then Marvel had it again for a while, and now I know Star Trek is still being published, but I don't even know who the publishers are anymore. So, and I can't keep up with them. But if anybody out watching this happens to listen to Geek History Lesson and knows how to can get a hold of those people, tell them to do Star Trek comics. And that's all I have to say about that. Like, share, subscribe. Beam me up, Scotty!